What if I told you that the entire concept of haute couture, from glamorous fashion shows to designer labels, began with one man in the 19th century? Long before names like Chanel and Dior became synonymous with high fashion, an Englishman in Paris transformed dressmaking from a humble craft into an art form and a global industry. His luxurious gowns set the standard at royal courts, and his bold ideas gave birth to the modern fashion business. He is Charles Frederick Worth, often hailed as the father of haute couture, and his legacy still shapes what we call fashion today. Welcome to the Fashion Memoir, where timeless style meets iconic moments. Don't forget to like and subscribe as we honor fashion, one icon at a time. Now let us step back into the gilded age of crinolines and corsets to discover how Charles Frederick Worth earned his title as fashion's first couturier. Look 1. The rise of a fashion pioneer. Charles Frederick Worth's journey began far from the opulence of Paris. He was born in Lincolnshire, England, in 1825, to a family that soon fell on hard times. As a boy, Worth had to work from the age of 11, starting out in a textile shop and learning the basics of fabrics and trimming. Those early years kindled his eye for detail and quality. In his teens, he moved to London, immersing himself in the drapery and haberdashery trade, but he dreamed of something greater. Like many ambitious young talents of his day, Worth set his sights on Paris, the undisputed capital of fashion. At 21, Charles Worth arrived in Paris with little money and no French, but plenty of determination. He found work at a prestigious fabric seller, where he soon began designing simple yet elegant dresses to showcase the textiles. His talent did not go unnoticed. By 1858, with the backing of a business partner, Worth boldly opened his own dressmaking salon at 7 Rue de la Paix, and thus the House of Worth was born. It was the first true haute couture house in Paris, and it marked a turning point. For the first time, a designer's name, Worth, would become as important as the garments he created. In those early days, Worth's wife, Marie Vernet, played a key role as well, modeling his designs and charming clients in their salon. The young Englishman's reputation grew quickly thanks to his impeccable craftsmanship and innovative flair. Still, one stroke of fate would launch him from promising designer to international trendsetter. That opportunity came from the very heights of French society. Look to Court Couture, dressing Empresses and the elite. The Second French Empire glittered with wealth and extravagance, and at its center was Empress Eugénie, wife of Emperor Napoleon III. Winning her favor was every designer's dream, and Charles Worth achieved it in spectacular fashion. The story goes that Worth cleverly enlisted a well-connected princess to wear one of his gowns to a court ball, knowing it would catch the empress's eye. The plan worked. In 1860, Empress Eugénie noticed the princess's stunning dress and was so impressed that she summoned Worth for a meeting the very next day. Thus began a legendary partnership. Eugénie became his most influential patron, and with the Empress of France herself showcasing his creations, Worth's name rocketed to the pinnacle of Parisian fashion. Soon, every aristocrat and socialite wanted a Worth gown. His clientele blossomed to include countesses, actresses, and princesses across Europe. Even foreign royals took note. Empress Elizabeth of Austria and Tsarinaise of Russia wore Worth's designs, bringing international prestige to the House of Worth. It is said that Queen Victoria in Britain acquired gowns from Worth as well, an extraordinary nod to his fame. A dress by Charles Worth became a status symbol in high society. These were no mere dresses, they were elaborate works of art, dripping with silk, velvet, and fine embroidery. His signature style embraced opulence and drama. Contemporary observers described some of his gowns as upholstery-style creations laden with ruffles, fringes, and lavish drapery, embodying the era's taste for conspicuous consumption. To wear a Worth gown was to signal one's wealth and fashion savvy in a world where appearance was power. Worth's relationship with his elite clients was unique for the time. He was not a submissive dressmaker, but a visionary who wasn't afraid to dictate style. If a duchess requested a blue gown but Worth felt she would shine more in pink, he would confidently insist on pink. This was unheard of, a designer imposing his creative vision on aristocrats, but Worth had earned such clout. He famously viewed himself as an artist rather than a mere tradesman. In fact, he once told a new customer, "I am an artist of the stature of Delacroix," and required that clients be introduced to him before he designed for them. It was a daring attitude, yet his patrons revered him all the more for it. On the eve of grand balls, dozens of ladies would flock to his salon at Rue de la Paix, sometimes queuing with tickets in hand for last-minute adjustments. Worth's staff would serve champagne or fine wine as high society women waited their turn to be fitted in the latest couture. The House of Worth became a social hub, part fitting salon, part theatre, where fashion, luxury, and celebrity converged. By the height of his career, Worth was dressing the who's who of Europe and beyond. Actresses and newly wealthy American socialites also traveled across the ocean to Paris just to be adorned by the master. His Paris salon was a must-visit destination for any woman of means on the Grand Tour. In an age when the ability of a woman to own property was limited, a sumptuous Worth gown was itself a statement of influence. It proclaimed that someone, a husband, a father, or the woman herself, had the fortune and taste to afford the very best. Worth had transformed fashion patronage. No longer were dressmakers anonymous servants stitching in backrooms. Now the designer was a star in his own right, courted by nobility, and even treated with the deference owed to an artist or dignitary. There are accounts of Grand Duchesses curtsying to Charles Worth as if he were royalty himself. In society pages and newspapers of the day, his name began to appear alongside the aristocrats he dressed, a clear sign that Charles Frederick Worth had become a celebrity. Look 3. Innovations that revolutionized fashion. What truly sets Charles Worth apart is not just whom he dressed, but how he changed the very system of fashion. Many practices we take for granted in today's industry were pioneered by Worth in the mid-19th century. At a time when dressmakers simply made garments to order, Worth dared to do things differently. He introduced ideas that turned his atelier into the template for the modern fashion house. Seasonal collections. Charles Worth was the first to create seasonal fashion lines. Instead of waiting for clients to request a design, he would develop an entire collection of new styles for each season and present them in advance. Clients could preview and order the upcoming season's looks, a radical shift that set the rhythm for fashion calendars. Showing spring dresses in January and autumn styles in summer was unheard of before Worth, yet it's exactly what today's designers do every fashion week. Live models and fashion shows. In Worth's salon, dresses were no longer draped on stiff mannequins or tiny dolls. He pioneered using live models, real women who walked and displayed the gowns for clients. This innovation enthralled his audience and was essentially the birth of the fashion show. The drama of seeing a gown in motion on a poised model helped clients envision themselves in the creations. Worth understood the power of presentation and theatre in selling style. Designer labels. Another of Worth's innovations was sewing his name into every garment. He started the practice of branding his designs with labels, effectively creating the first designer label in clothing. In the 1860s, this was a novel idea. Clothes makers were rarely known by name, but Worth wanted the world to recognize his work. By the 1880s, a Worth label bearing his distinctive signature was a coveted mark of authenticity and luxury. It spread his fame across continents, as dresses with the House of Worth label reached clients in Britain, Russia, America, and even Japan. Trend-setting authority. Perhaps most importantly, Worth redefined the role of the fashion designer. He believed the designer should be an authority on style, not merely a servant to a client's whims. In practice, this meant he often persuaded clients to follow his vision for cut, color, and silhouette. By doing so, Worth became a trendsetter, effectively dictating fashion trends to society. This was the birth of the couturier, as an arbiter of taste, paving the way for all the famous designers who followed. Worth's inventive spirit extended to the garments themselves. He had a keen sense for how fashion needed to evolve with the times. For example, the enormous hooped skirts crinolines of the 1850s, while fashionable, were impractical and even hazardous. Ladies' skirts could catch fire or knock over furniture. In the mid-1860s, Worth was instrumental in phasing out the bulky crinoline in favor of a more streamlined silhouette. He introduced dresses with flatter fronts and gathered fabric trailing towards the back, which gave rise to the bustle, a padded framework at the back of women's dresses that created a graceful train. Worth did not single-handedly invent the idea of the bustle, but he popularized and perfected it. His bustle gowns allowed women to move more freely, no more getting stuck in doorways, while still preserving a dramatic shape. This innovation in dress structure changed the course of women's fashion across the Western world. By the 1870s, the bustle dress had become the defining style, thanks in large part to Worth's influence. Another notable innovation was Worth's development of the princess line silhouette. For one of his royal clients, Princess Alexandra of Britain, Worth created a gown without the usual waist seam, using long panels of fabric that ran from shoulder to floor in one continuous flow. This princess line design elegantly elongated the figure and was a refreshing departure from the norm. It would inspire dress styles into the next century. Worth showed that modernization and creativity could go hand in hand with luxury. Behind the scenes, the House of Worth was becoming a model of modern fashion business. At its peak, Worth's enterprise employed over 1,000 people, from skilled seamstresses and embroiderers to saleswomen and fitters. The operation resembled a well-run creative factory, turning out exquisite made-to-measure gowns at a scale previously unknown. Clients from as far as the United States would cross the ocean to visit his Paris atelier or have entire wardrobes custom-made and shipped overseas on steamships. Worth also understood marketing intuitively. He orchestrated stunning displays at world's fairs and cultivated press coverage. By the 1870s, his name was appearing in ladies' magazines read by the broader public. In short, Charles Worth was not only the first couturier, he was the first fashion marketer and brand builder as well. His flair for self-promotion, tempered with genuine artistry, meant that his name became a byword for luxury. To own a Worth gown was to own a piece of haute couture history in the making. Look for cultural impact and enduring legacy. Charles Frederick Worth left an enduring influence on fashion culture that can still be felt today. First and foremost, he elevated the status of fashion designers. Before Worth, dressmakers were seldom credited. After Worth, the designer became a celebrated figure at the heart of the fashion narrative. He proved that a designer's creative vision could shape how an entire society dresses. Worth's success also cemented Paris as the world's fashion capital. In 1868, he helped found the Chambre syndicale de la haute couture, the trade association of Paris couture houses, establishing standards for the young haute couture industry and defending originality in design. This organization today, part of the Fédération de la haute couture et de la mode, still presides over which houses can be officially called haute couture. Such was Worth's authority that he was essentially setting the rules of the game for decades to come. The House of Worth itself continued to be a major force well beyond Charles's own lifetime. When Worth passed away in 1895, his two sons Gaston and Jean-Philippe took over the business and upheld their father's illustrious standards. In the early 20th century, they kept dressing royalty and high society. Indeed, the house experienced a second golden age in the Edwardian era, adapting its luxurious style to the Belle Époque, and even the Jazz Age. Charles's grandson, Jean-Charles Worth, introduced perfumes and collaborated with artists, ensuring the brand stayed current with the times. For nearly a century, the name Worth remained synonymous with extravagant elegance. The couture house finally closed its doors in the 1950s after dressing its third generation of clientele, but by then Charles Worth's impact was already woven into the fabric of fashion history. The cultural ripples of Worth's work were felt in many ways. His approach to luxury defined the look of the Victorian and Second Empire eras. Images of crinoline and bustle gowns in paintings and photographs often feature creations either by Worth or inspired by him. Writers of the time even immortalized his influence. French author Émile Zola, in his novel The Kill, modeled a fictional couturier on Worth, portraying him as a temperamental genius catering to Paris's elite. The very notion of the fashion designer as a celebrity artist began with Charles Worth and became a cornerstone of fashion culture in the 20th century. Even as styles changed with the decades, Worth's legacy kept re-emerging. When the streamlined modern look took over after World War I, think Coco Chanel's minimalist suits, it might have seemed that Worth's era of sumptuous gowns was consigned to history's wardrobe. But fashion is cyclical. In 1947, Christian Dior unveiled his new look, a return to cinched waists and full skirts, which was essentially a revival of the opulent elegance from Worth's heyday. Dior and other couturiers knew they were drawing from a grand tradition that Worth had started. In fact, many legendary designers have cited or reflected Worth's influence. The dramatic silhouettes and historical references beloved by designers like Vivienne Westwood, John Galliano, or Alexander McQueen in the late 20th and early 21st centuries all pay homage to the idea that fashion can be theatrical art. They owe a creative debt to the man who first proved that point in couture. Even today, elements of Worth's vision appear on runways. Extravagant embroidery, luxurious fabrics, and nostalgic nods to Victorian grandeur regularly grace haute couture collections. In one recent example, a spring couture gown by Schiaparelli, designed in 2025, went viral for its extravagance. The designer openly cited Charles Worth as an inspiration, showing that his spirit still sparks imaginations more than 150 years later. Beyond aesthetics, the very framework of the fashion industry is part of Worth's legacy. Whenever we talk about designer brands, luxury labels, or fashion houses, we're invoking the system that Worth pioneered. The cycle of fashion seasons, the spectacle of runway presentations, the idea of a flagship salon where a creative director shapes a house's identity, all of these conventions began with that enterprising Englishman in Paris. It is little wonder that museums around the world treasure Charles Worth's gowns as priceless artifacts of fashion history. Exhibitions continue to celebrate his contributions. For instance, a major retrospective Worth inventing haute couture at Paris's Petit Palais has drawn crowds in recent times, allowing new generations to marvel at his artistry and understand the foundations of haute couture. In the end, Charles Frederick Worth's greatest creation was not a single dress, but the concept of haute couture itself. He showed that with talent, vision, and daring, a designer could rise from obscurity to shape an entire culture of style. The doors he opened for the fashion industry remain open today, and every designer who seeks to make their mark follows in his formidable footsteps. The final look. Throughout this journey, we have seen how Charles Frederick Worth transformed fashion from his humble beginnings to dressing empresses to revolutionizing how style itself is produced and promoted. Worth's influence is everywhere, in the way designers present collections, in the prestige of luxury labels, and in the enduring allure of haute couture. He set the stage for modern fashion, proving that clothing could be art, innovation, and business all at once. His legacy lives on in every runway show and every couture gown that captivates our imagination. If you enjoyed our deep dive into this fashion pioneer, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Share in the comments which iconic fashion figure you'd love to see featured next. Now stay curious and inspired. This has been the Fashion Memoir.